Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's announcement. Joining us this morning are the Honorable Minister of the Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schulz, and Jim Fisher, VP of Canadian Policy at Delta Waterfowl. I'll now invite Minister Schulz to open today's announcement.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm here today to announce new funding to help make Alberta more naturally drought resilient while also transforming how water is managed in our province. Water is one of the most precious resources we have, and we have to manage this resource more efficiently for the months and years to come. We're taking unprecedented steps and direct action to prepare for the risk of severe drought this year. The largest water sharing negotiations in provincial history are underway. We've also stood up a drought command team and launched a new water advisory committee. We're doing advanced modeling and working with industry, municipalities, Indigenous groups, and many others to make every drop this year count. We've asked roughly 25,000 water license holders to move their licenses online to speed up drought responses and to ensure they start planning now in case less water is available this year. These immediate actions will help all communities, urban, rural, and Indigenous communities, as well as farmers, ranchers, irrigators, and other industries, have better access to the water they need this spring, summer, and fall. We're far from finished. I expect to have more updates in the weeks and months ahead, but we also need to think about resiliency and long-term plans for multi-year drought and flood conditions. Our province is growing, communities are growing, and our major industries are growing as well. More and more Canadians and people from around the world are coming here to live, to work, and to raise their families. As a province, we need to adapt to meet these demands. We have to find new and better ways to maximize our province's water supply, not just for today, but also for future Albertans. And that's why we're here today. Our government will be investing $35 million through Budget 2024 to help make Alberta more naturally drought resistant and create a more effective and modern water management system, one that will help communities and businesses thrive for decades to come. The bulk of this funding, $23 million over 3 years, will help bring our water management system into the 21st century. Through new and improved water storage projects like the Ardley Reservoir, more efficient water conservation, modernizing our information systems, all while identifying new opportunities to better utilize water here in Alberta. We're focusing on 4 pillars: water storage, water management, water conservation, and finally, real-time data and information. To that end, we will also be investing $4.5 million into fast-tracking important studies to explore creating a new Ardley water reservoir in the Red Deer River Basin. Red Deer and Central Alberta are growing, and so too are their water demands. A reservoir near Ardley, just east of Red Deer, could provide a vital tool to help support farmers, ranchers, businesses, and residents in the area. Scoping and feasibility studies will get underway as soon as possible. My department will also conduct a province-wide review to identify other areas where water storage is needed most and what projects would have the biggest impact. Increasing water storage is a start, but we also need to do a better job of using the water we collect. That's why we'll be taking a hard look at how we manage and regulate water to see what policies need to change. We will be working with farmers, ranchers, municipalities, water councils, irrigators, and others to find new ways to increase water conservation, efficiency, and productivity. Finally, a modern water system cannot rely on paper, faxes, and forms. This new funding will help us keep improving our digital information systems. In the next few years, I hope to have all of Alberta's water data and information online, organized, and accessible at any time, anywhere. This, of course, will not happen overnight, but we're setting the course for a brighter future where we have more water available and use every drop. But that's not all. We know that healthy, thriving wetlands and watersheds provide natural drought protection. They help store water in times of drought and absorb it to help us prevent floods. That's why we're investing an additional $12 million to help restore and improve Alberta's wetlands and watersheds. These dollars will fund dozens of projects led by communities, conservation organizations, and Indigenous groups across our province. It will help restore wetlands that were previously drained, partially drained, or filled in, and it will pay for new wetlands to be constructed where they're needed most. This $35 million investment is about helping ensure that Alberta enjoys water for life. We'll continue to work on ensuring Alberta's future has water for all when and where they need it, water for families and communities to grow and for businesses to thrive. Thank you, and I will now invite Jim Fisher of Delta Waterfowl to give some brief remarks as well.
Thank you, Minister Schulz. Good morning. My name is Jim Fisher. I'm the Vice President of Policy for Delta Waterfowl. Delta was started by the founder of General Mills. His name is James Ford Bell, and he was a duck hunter and conservationist from Minnesota. And he had his inspirations from the Delta Marsh, right here in Canada. We proudly continue his legacy on behalf of hunter conservationists from across Canada and the U.S. Delta has a long history of working with agricultural producers to conserve and enhance wetlands and the environment overall through voluntary incentive programs such as ALICE right here in Alberta. On behalf of Delta, we are pleased to be part of this exciting funding announcement by the Government of Alberta. I'm happy to highlight some of the key pieces of the announcement. The first off is wetlands. Investing in wetlands is a wise move, as wetlands act like a sponge and provide a number of benefits in times of drought. They provide us an important source of water for both annual and forage crops. They recharge groundwater stores and aquifers. They also provide atmospheric water through evaporation and subsequent precipitation. Watersheds. Investing in watersheds provide numerous benefits to Albertans, as documented by your very own cows and fish. Off-site watering projects utilize water in a highly efficient manner, providing clean water for cattle. Riparian fencing projects keep robust vegetation buffers to enhance water quality. Watersheds also are very interested in conserving and enhancing wetlands that also provides drought resiliency. The third key component to today's announcement is the delivery model itself. By providing funds to an array of local groups such as municipalities, ALICE, watershed groups, Indigenous communities, and other nonprofits, the province is ensuring an effective delivery of projects on the ground. These groups have the trust of farmers and ranchers who can enhance the land and make it more resilient to drought. Delta Waterfowl is very pleased to be part of this exciting announcement and look forward to seeing the many valuable outcomes of this important investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. We will now open the floor to questions. Friendly reminder that it will be one question and one follow-up. I will let you know in advance as well that we are pressed on time today. We will try and get through as many questions as possible. We'll start in the room before going to the phone lines.
Are we talking about building new dams here?
So what we're looking at right now is more research into the feasibility and technical work. Whether we're looking at storage, we've also said that we would look at opportunities for hydro, better ways to manage water, either in droughts or floods. Ardley is one project that has been, I would say, on the list or been in discussion for a number of years, and so I think it's good to prioritize the work that's being done on that one as well.
And a follow-up on the wetlands side. Over the years, we've kind of seen a migration of wetlands from southern Alberta to northern Alberta, just because of because of offsets and the way the program works. Does this new program, will that kind of reverse that? Will you actually be creating new wetlands or restoring new wetlands in southern Alberta as well as in the north?
You know, we are working with all nonprofit organizations as well as community-based organizations, Indigenous communities, municipalities, to expand wetlands, restore wetlands across the province. That's why in this year's budget you're seeing a small increase to the program as well, so that we can speed up some of the work on that. We know, and I often get asked, will this help us for this year's drought? Of course. You know, that work doesn't happen that quickly, but it is important for us to protect, I would say, against drought and flood for future years to come. So that's why we've seen that, I would say, expansion in this year's budget.
And for the water management review of both current water management practices and regulatory systems, what's in scope, what's off the table, something you're not going to touch, what are you looking at there?
Yeah, we're still gathering information on that from our water advisory panel. And when we struck that panel, really, of course, the most urgent work is how do we get through the next number of months? How do we get through this growing season? It was important to us to make sure that we had representation from irrigation, from agriculture, from our major industries, as well as small and larger municipalities alike. We do want to look at how we might be able to work together to share best practices, how we might be able to encourage water conservation, how we can better understand the water of the water that is already allocated, how much is actually being used, what is free to share with others. I mean, that's part of our water allocation discussions that we're having right now to help us get through the next couple of months, especially in southern Alberta, but it's good information to have. Are there areas where we're an outlier in terms of water use compared to other jurisdictions? And again, then, you know, if we are an outlier, how might we encourage that conservation so we can actually maximize the water that we have available in our province, whether that be to support residents or our growing major industries. So I think it's a little bit too early to tell, but I can already say that our water advisory panel has met once, and I believe they're meeting again next week, and already they're bringing forward very specific ideas of policy changes that might be able to be made, regulatory changes that might be able to make, how we might be able to speed up some of the projects that we're working on. I've often used the conversation or the example of Pincher Creek and how we've worked with that community to meet their unique needs, how we found an interim solution by moving their water intake valve, how we could speed up the construction on actually getting them access to the aquifer below groundwater. If there are ways that we can speed those processes up, we want to hear that from our major partners. And I know on the town halls, we also opened it up to any water user on those calls who has ideas of how sometimes it's regulatory barriers are getting in the way of our major industries doing the right thing and be able to reuse and conserve water. We need that information from our major water users so that we can better plan for the future.
And is there a timeline of this review, or are you kind of going to change the regs as needed, as they come up, or how?
I would say that, more to come in April, specifically on that. There will be some policy or regulatory changes that we can make sooner rather than later, just to help give us the flexibility we need to manage the drought that we are anticipating this year. That said, some of those urgent short-term changes, I think, are things that we've been asked for a long time, so there might be ways that we can make those changes to benefit our long-term water allocation system. And of course, that's part of the mandate letter item that Premier had asked me to do, which is really about maximizing Alberta's water allocation. I would also imagine that additional changes would be coming in the fall. If there are legislative changes, you know, obviously it's a little tight for the spring, and we're still gathering feedback on that. And it was something like water, it's important to consult. We're gathering this input and these ideas, but we want to make sure that what we put in place will serve Albertans well, not only now, but for generations to come.
Seeing no more questions in the room, operator, could you put through our first question on the phone?
Thank you. Joel Dryden, CBC Calgary.
Good morning. I'm just wondering if we could get any more detail on what is the current thinking around interbasin diversion? Is that on the table?
You know, we have done that in some instances. I would say low risk for drinking water purposes that has been allowed. It is something that has come up in our conversations from specifically the irrigation districts. That said, I think it's also just seeing where our water shortages are right now in this year, and it's one of the ideas that's been brought forward in terms of one of the ways that we can meet those needs, especially in southern Alberta with water from other basins. This is something we could look at. We'd want to obviously, though, I think do our work to make sure that we're not impacting the current allocation commitments that we have in terms of the flow through of water that we're expected to pass through, whether that be to Saskatchewan, to Northwest Territories, or to Montana. So that would be one of the things we'd have to look at. The other thing is looking at impact to aquatic life. Sometimes it's not a great idea to transfer water from one basin to another, depending on the species that would be living in those basins. And so I would say we'd have to look at both our obligations when it comes to water flow through to those other jurisdictions, and again, just to biodiversity. But it is something that is raised. It's been raised on on both of the teletown halls that we've had as one of the solutions. It's also something that has been raised in terms of oil sands mine water. That review work is going to be beginning right away in terms of what might be some of the other uses of treated oil sands mine water, and how could we reuse that water in other industries or for other purposes. So more work needs to be done on that before we could say what that might look like, but it is something that has been raised quite a bit, I would say, over the last number of weeks and months.
And then I guess I'm just wondering about the potential state of emergency. I guess what is the specific criteria that you're looking for, and how likely do you view that at this point?
So Alberta has not ever before declared a state of emergency when it comes to water. Right now we are at level 4, and we have been there for the last number of months. Last year we were there as well. In the past, through a similar approach to what we're taking right now, all major water users were asked to come together to have conversations about how we could conserve in some areas, how much water was available to be redistributed to other uses, to make sure that all users within the system have access to some water. That's essentially the approach that we're taking right now. It's a collaborative one. So far, those discussions have been going well. As I mentioned, those conversations began, I believe, back in November, December. And so we've had dozens of those conversations with the water users. I think because Albertans have been through this before, they have come to the table with their sleeves rolled up, ready to have those conversations and help out the other major water users in their basins. That's a positive. However, we're still monitoring snowpack, precipitation. We do have that additional contract in place to help us with some of the modeling. So I would anticipate in April we might have more specifics on what we think we're going to need, what a potential emergency would look like. Obviously, that would be a very extraordinary circumstance that would allow government to start directing and making decisions on water allocation and priority. And we're hoping that we can avoid that through the discussions that we're having right now. So I would say on that front, stay tuned to the beginning of April, and we'll have some more specific information for you on that.
Operator, could you put through our next caller?
Thank you. Dave Luneberg, Shooting the Breeze.
Minister, I don't know if I missed this or not. How will the money be allocated? Will wetlands and conservation groups supply, or how is that being done?
Absolutely. So of the $35 million that we're announcing here today as part of Budget 2024, $23 million is really going to that water allocation maximization. So there's $18.5 million for operating. We wanted to give ourselves some flexibility to navigate what we know is going to be some uncertainty over the coming months. $4.5 million specifically for the Ardley Reservoir in the Red Deer Basin. We have $8.7 million for wetland replacement program and $3.5 million for the watershed resiliency and restoration program. And you're exactly right. As in the past with these programs, community organizations, our local nonprofits who do amazing work on the ground, municipalities, Indigenous communities, they can apply for this funding, and then we roll that out so that they can do the good local work that they do.
Follow-up question is for Mr. Fisher, please. Are there any particular projects or areas that you've already identified in southwest Alberta, Crow's Nest, Pincher Creek, and so on?
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything specific to that region. This is, I think it's for across the province for all these different stakeholder groups that are partners with the Alberta government. So it's up to the applicants, and we certainly expect applications from across Alberta.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
Did you have a follow-up?
No, that was my follow-up. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Great. We can go to the next caller then.
Thank you. Colin Gallant, Medicine Hat News.
Cheers. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a little bit late, and I don't know if you've covered it before, but I guess at what point, the Minister, what point do we feel like we might need to talk to Saskatchewan, perhaps Ottawa, about the transfer agreement? We've got a big irrigation expansion plan in Saskatchewan, a big irrigation expansion plan in Alberta. We're talking about Airmore Dam now. How do you see that going forward, and what would be needed?
Yeah, that's a great question, and conversations with Saskatchewan are something that my ministry has prioritized. In the past, what has often been raised with me is the fact that we pass along more than our obligated share of water into Saskatchewan, and that's really where projects like this have come from. How are we maximizing the water infrastructure we have to make sure that we are actually using the water allocation that we have access to and not allowing that all continue on through into other jurisdictions as well. So it's always the balance of meeting our obligations, but also making sure that we're using the water that we have available to us, not just for irrigation, but of course for all water purposes. So absolutely, we will be having conversations with Saskatchewan. I believe the department already has over the last number of weeks and months. But also, I mean, this was a topic raised when I spoke with the new Minister in Northwest Territories. And, you know, if there are going to be other impacts, of course, we have some obligations south of the border in Montana that may be impacted as well. But specific for this project over Ardley, absolutely, conversations with Saskatchewan are going to be necessary. But again, you know, we also want to make sure that we are accessing and utilizing the available water that we have to us.
Okay. Speaking of, I mean, what sort of long-term modeling has the ministry done about what the future flow will be of the river? We have, you know, we hear a lot about glaciers receding, you know, and, you know, this year is a dry year and next year is maybe wet, and that sort of thing. But obviously, I mean, won't there be less water available in the future? I mean, actual amount?
So the department already has modeling, but then we also did just contract for additional, more specific modeling that WaterSmart is taking on. And so we're very grateful. They're a very well-respected partner when it comes to water. We rolled that out, I believe, just a couple of months ago. And so that you're exactly right, that type of modeling is not only what we need to get us through the next couple of months, but how we can better understand water going forward. Also, we are building out our own water monitoring infrastructure, specifically when it comes to groundwater, so that we also understand what the groundwater situation looks like for Alberta, what might be available to us, and of course, by having a better understanding of the water that exists right now and being able to have more accurate modeling to come, it helps us not only in these urgent situations that we're seeing this year, but of course for maximizing our long-term water allocations.
We can go to the next caller.
Thank you. Jackie Carmichael, Edmonton Journal. Jackie, your line's open.
Hello, sorry. You mentioned that Alberta has not had a state of emergency as it comes to water. I'm wondering how close we are to a water state of emergency in Alberta and what it would take to avert that.
Yeah, you know what? That's exactly what we're working to determine right now. And so in the past, when we've been in situations like this, a lot of times I reference 2001 was when we saw the last drought to this extent. It's been about 7 years since we saw an El Nino like this as well. But in those times, essentially the approach that the government and the department took was one of collaboration with all of our major water users. And so that's really what the dozens of water sharing agreement conversations since late last fall have been all about. How much water are you using of your current allocation? What can you do to conserve water from here moving forward? What water within your allocated portion might you be able to share with other users? Because if we're in a situation where, of course, we're seeing significant drought, but there is enough water within that system and within those existing allocations to meet water needs. I wouldn't say all the full water needs, but making sure every user within a system has access to water, then hopefully we can make it through this without having to declare an emergency, which is really what took place in the past. Declaring a water emergency here in Alberta, we can do that also in a localized area. So if there was a situation where a community just did not have access to water, and typically we would prioritize things like human health and safety, animal health and safety. Those are typically the top priority uses. If we were in a situation where we couldn't meet human needs for water, that would be one example where I think we would have to look at a state of emergency. But like I said earlier, more specifics to come. I believe I probably shouldn't schedule my next press conference, but I would commit to the beginning of April. We'll have some data both on the water sharing agreements, what we have available, what specific criteria we would use to declare an emergency. And I think by then we'll have a little bit more of that modeling data that we're going to need to have a better prediction of what things are going to look like through the spring and summer.
Okay, as a follow-up question, what kinds of things get cut when water gets short? So if you have to ration it or you have to conserve it, what sorts of things have to give?
I would just say that I think no matter if you are a resident or you are a business or if you're one of our major industries, right now conservation is important. Every drop that you are not using might be able to be used by another water user down the road. And so, I don't think we're in that situation where we're going to pick and choose importance of uses, but I would say, and it's not just in Alberta, but human health and safety, livestock health and safety are absolutely our top priority water uses. And our hope is that through these water agreement conversations that we've been having, we're able to make sure that we can not only find conservation within the system, reallocate that water, and make sure that every user has access to at least some of their water allocation. We do know that some industries, they're going to feel this more than others. But I do just think that, at this point, I'm optimistic based on how those conversations have been going and the willingness of all of our partners to work together.
That was our final question. With that, we are concluding today's announcement. Have a wonderful day, everyone.